In the misty depths of Blackthorn Manor, a priceless portrait of Amelia Blackthorn vanishes, its crimson-clad figure hiding a secret that could unravel a family's legacy. Hercule Poirot, with his razor-sharp mind, untangles a web of greed, betrayal, and hidden truth's crimson clues, secret passages, and a mysterious locket lead to a shocking conspiracy. Who stole the painting, and what fortune does it conceal? In just moments, Poirot will reveal all, but can you guess the truth before he does? Chapter 1. The invitation to Blackthorn Manor. The morning mist clung to the windows of Hercule Poirot's London flat, softening the sharp lines of the city beyond. The air was crisp, carrying the faint tang of coal smoke, a reminder of the bustling world outside his sanctuary of order. Poirot stood before his polished mahogany dressing table, his small, fastidious hands adjusting the precise curve of his moustache. The mirror reflected a man of impeccable neatness. His patent leather shoes gleamed. His suit was tailored to perfection, and his green eyes sparkled with the anticipation of a mind already engaged. His grey cells, as he so often called them, were stirring, awakened by the arrival of a letter that lay open on his desk, its elegant script promising a mystery. The letter was from Lady Eleanor Blackthorn, mistress of Blackthorn Manor, a Gothic estate nestled in the mist-shrouded hills of Devon. Poirot had read it thrice, each time savouring the undercurrent of unease woven into her polite words. She invited him to attend a private unveiling of a newly acquired portrait, a work of art reputed to be a masterpiece by an obscure artist of the mid-19th century. The painting, she wrote, was said to hold secrets of the Blackthorn family, secrets that had stirred unease among her household. "I fear, Monsieur Poirot," she had written, "that its arrival has unsettled more than just the dust of our old home. Your presence would be a comfort." The vagueness of her concern intrigued him. A painting was no mere object. It was a canvas of human passions, a repository of truths hidden beneath layers of paint. Poirot, ever drawn to the enigmatic, had accepted at once. Captain Arthur Hastings, his loyal friend and confidant, sat in the armchair by the fire, his broad face creased with curiosity as he sipped tea. "Really, Poirot," he said, setting down his cup, "a weekend in Devon over a painting sounds rather tame for you. I thought you preferred murders or jewel thefts." Poirot turned, his eyes twinkling. "Mon ami, you underestimate the power of art. A portrait is not merely paint on canvas. It is a window to the Solent sometimes, to secrets best left hidden." Lady Eleanor's letter speaks of disquiet. Where there is disquiet, there is often a mystery. And where there is a mystery, there is Poirot. Hastings chuckled, accustomed to his friend's flair for the dramatic. "Well, I suppose a change of scenery won't hurt. Devon's lovely this time of year, even if it's a bit damp. Shall I pack my golf clubs?" Poirot raised an eyebrow. "Golf, Hastings? Non. Your energies will be better spent observing the human heart. Pack your wits instead." The journey to Devon was a study in contrasts. The train rattled through the grey sprawl of London, then gave way to rolling fields and hedgerows, their greens muted by the autumn haze. Poirot, seated in their first-class compartment, reviewed the letter once more, his lips pursed in thought. Hastings, ever the optimist, gazed out the window, remarking on the charm of the countryside. "Look at that, Poirot proper English beauty, makes one forget the smog of town." Poirot nodded absently. "Beauty, oui, but it is the shadows that interests me. Lady Eleanor mentions a family, a household. Each person, Hastings, is a thread in the tapestry of this mystery. We must study them all. As the train neared its destination, the landscape grew wilder, the hills rising like sentinels under a sky streaked with crimson. Blackthorn Manor came into view as their hired car wound up a gravel drive, its Gothic spires piercing the dusk. The manor was a formidable structure, its stone facade weathered by centuries, its windows glinting like watchful eyes. Ivy clung to its walls, and the air carried the scent of damp earth and ancient wood. Hastings shivered, though whether from the chill or the manor's imposing presence, he could not say. Lady Eleanor Blackthorn awaited them at the entrance, her figure framed by the massive oak doors. She was a woman of late middle age, her silver hair swept into an elegant chignon, her posture regal despite the faint lines of worry etched around her eyes. Her dress, a deep sapphire silk, rustled as she extended a gloved hand. Monsieur Poirot, Captain Hastings, I am deeply grateful you've come, she said, her voice refined but tinged with strain. The manor feels ... unsettled. The portrait has stirred something, though I cannot say what. Poirot bowed, his manner courtly. Madame, it is an honor to assist. A painting, you say, has caused this disquiet. Tell me more. She hesitated, glancing toward the grand staircase that spiraled into the shadows of the hall. It is best discussed indoors. Please, come. The others are waiting. The entrance hall was a cavern of dark wood and polished marble, its walls adorned with ancestral portraits whose eyes seemed to follow their steps. A chandelier glittered above, casting fractured light across a suit of armor that stood sentinel by the staircase. Lady Eleanor led them to a drawing room where a fire crackled, its warmth doing little to dispel the chill of the manor's ancient bones. The room was furnished with heavy velvet drapes, mahogany furniture, and a grand piano, its keys yellowed with age. A group of people awaited, their faces a gallery of curiosity, suspicion, and guarded politeness. Lady Eleanor introduced them with practiced grace. First was her son, Reginald Blackthorn, a man in his early 30s, with sharp features and a brooding air. His dark eyes flickered with impatience, and his hands, though gloved, betrayed a nervous habit of clenching and unclenching. Reginald manages the estate's affairs, Lady Eleanor said, her tone neutral. Poirot noted the slight tightening of her lips, suggesting a mother's concern for a wayward son. Next was Clara Wentworth, Lady Eleanor's niece, a woman of striking beauty in her late 20s. Her auburn hair was pinned loosely, and her green eyes held a sharpness that belied her delicate appearance. She offered a polite smile, but it did not reach her eyes, which darted briefly toward Reginald before settling on Poirot. Clara is an artist herself, Lady Eleanor added, and has a keen interest in the portrait. Dr. Simon Vale, the family physician, stood by the fireplace, his lean frame relaxed, but his gaze calculating. His silver hair and wire-rimmed spectacles gave him an air of authority, yet there was a studied calmness to his movements, as if he were always measuring his words. Dr. Vale has been a friend to the family for years, Lady Eleanor said, and he inclined his head, his smile faint but courteous. Mrs. Beatrice Langston, a widowed friend of Lady Eleanor's, sat on a velvet settee, her plump figure swathed in lavender silk. Her eyes gleamed with the eagerness of one who thrived on gossip, and her voice carried a hint of excitement as she greeted Poirot. "Oh, Monsieur Poirot, I've heard so much about you. This business with the portrait quite thrilling, isn't it?" The butler, Mr. Grayson, moved silently to pour sherry, his gaunt face impassive. His black suit was immaculate, but his eyes, when they met Poirot's, held a flicker of something wariness, perhaps. The housekeeper, Mrs. Finch, hovered near the door, her hands twisting in her apron. Her round face was pale, and her eyes darted nervously about the room, as if expecting some unseen threat. Poirot, ever observant, catalogued each face, each gesture. The room was a stage, and these were the players, each with a role yet to be. Revealed, Madame, he said to Lady Eleanor, tell me of this portrait. Why does it cause such unease? She gestured toward an easel in the corner, draped in rich velvet. It is to be unveiled tonight, a private affair for the household. The painting is of Amelia Blackthorne, my great-aunt, painted in 1845. It was lost for decades, only recently discovered in a Paris auction. Its return has stirred memories, and perhaps fears, among us. Fears. Poirot's voice was gentle, but his eyes were sharp. Of what nature? Lady Eleanor hesitated, her fingers tightening on her sherry glass. Amelia was a figure of mystery. She was said to have hidden a fortune before her death, a fortune never found. Some believe the portrait holds a clue to its whereabouts. Others, ... She trailed off, glancing at Clara, who looked away. Others believe it cursed. Clara said softly, her voice steady but her hands clasped tightly. My mother spoke of it once. She said Amelia's eyes followed her, as if alive. Reginald snorted, breaking the tension. Superstition, Clara. It's just a painting, and a valuable one. Mother, you're letting old stories get the better of you. Lady Eleanor's smile was strained. Perhaps, Reginald, but its arrival has coincided with ... odd occurrences. Strange noises at night, footsteps where none should be. I thought Monsieur Poirot might bring clarity. Poirot inclined his head. Clarity is my profession, Madame. I shall observe, and I shall listen. The truth, it always reveals itself. The unveiling was set for after dinner, and the meal was a sombre affair. The dining room, with its long oak table and flickering candelabra, felt like a scene from another era. The food, roast pheasant, creamed potatoes, and a delicate consomme was exquisite, but the conversation was stilted. Mrs. Langston prattled about London society, while Reginald drank more wine than was wise, his eyes darting to the door as if expecting an interruption. Clara ate sparingly, her gaze fixed on her plate, while Dr. Vale spoke little, his attention on Lady Eleanor, who seemed distracted. Grayson and Mrs. Finch served with silent efficiency, their presence almost ghostly. Poirot, seated at Lady Eleanor's right, steered the conversation gently. This Amelia Blackthorne, she was an artist, like Mademoiselle Wentworth. Clara looked up, surprised. Yes, she painted, though few of her works survive. She was ... unconventional. The family disapproved of her, or so I've heard. Disapproved. Poirot's tone was light, but his eyes missed nothing. Why? So, Lady Eleanor answered, her voice low. Amelia was headstrong, defiant of tradition. She never married, and there were rumors of scandal and affair, perhaps, or secrets she kept from the family. When she died, the manor was searched for. Her supposed fortune, but nothing was found. Fascinating, Poirot murmured, sipping his wine. And this portrait, it is her work? No, Clara said quickly. It's of her, painted by another. The signature is unclear, but it's exquisite, almost lifelike. Mrs. Langston leaned forward, her eyes bright. They say Amelia's spirit lingers in it. I heard a maid saw it move in the moonlight. Reginald rolled his eyes. Nonsense, Beatrice. You've been reading too many Gothic novels. Dr. Vale smiled thinly. The mind plays tricks, Mrs. Langston. A painting is merely pigment and canvas, nothing more. Poirot noted the doctor's dismissal, as well as Clara's sudden stillness. The meal concluded, and the party adjourned to the drawing room for the unveiling. The air was thick with anticipation, the fire casting long shadows across the room. Lady Eleanor stood by the easel, her hands trembling slightly as she grasped the velvet drape. Monsieur Poirot, Captain Hastings, honoured guests, she began, her voice steadying. This portrait has returned to Blackthorn Manor after a century. May it bring us truth, not turmoil. She pulled the drape aside, revealing the painting. The room fell silent, save for a collective intake of breath. The portrait depicted a woman in a crimson gown, her dark hair cascading over her shoulders, her eyes piercing and almost alive. The brushwork was masterful, capturing a haunting intensity in her gaze, as if she were watching the room. The signature, Amelia Blackthorne, 1845, was scrawled in the corner. Though the artist's name was indeed faint, as Clara had said, Poirot stepped closer, his eyes tracing every detail. The crimson gown seemed to shimmer, and the shadowy room with a single candle added to the portrait's eerie allure. He noted Clara's pallor, her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles were white. Reginald's jaw was set, his eyes fixed on the painting with something like resentment. Mrs. Langston gasped dramatically, while Dr. Vale's expression remained unreadable. Grayson and Mrs. Finch stood at the room's edge, their faces shadowed. Magnifique, Poirot said softly, though his mind was already at work. The portrait was more than art. It was a catalyst, stirring emotions long buried. He turned to Lady Eleanor. Madame, this is a treasure. But tell me, have you noticed anything unusual since its arrival? She hesitated, then nodded. Small things, a book misplaced, a door left ajar, and last night I heard footsteps in the corridor, but no one was there. Clara shivered. It's her, Amelia. I felt it when I saw the painting. Nonsense, Reginald snapped, but his voice lacked conviction. Poirot's smile was enigmatic. We shall see, monsieur. The night is young, and the manor has much to tell. As the household dispersed to their rooms, Poirot lingered, his eyes on the portrait. Hastings joined him, his brow furrowed. What do you make of it, Poirot? All this talk of curses and fortunes, it's a bit much, isn't it? Poirot's gaze remained on Amelia's eyes. The portrait speaks, Hastings. It speaks of secrets, of greed, perhaps of betrayal. But what does it say, and who listens? That is the question. They retired to their guest rooms, the manor's corridors creaking underfoot. Poirot's room was a study in opulence, with a four-poster bed and heavy brocade curtains, but he paid it little mind. He sat at a small desk, his notebook open, jotting observations, Reginald's tension debts, Clara's fear personal connection to Amelia, Dr. Vale's reserve hiding knowledge, Grayson's silence loyalty or guilt. The manor, he sensed, was a web, and the portrait was its center. Sleep did not come easily. The wind howled outside, rattling the windows, and Poirot's mind raced. He rose, slipping into his dressing gown, and stepped into the corridor. The manor was silent, save for a faint creak from below. He descended the staircase, his torch casting a narrow beam. In the drawing room, the portrait stood untouched, Amelia's eyes gleaming in the dim light. Poirot studied it, his fingers brushing the frame. There, in the lower corner, he noticed a faint irregularity, a seam, perhaps, or a hidden panel. He made a mental note to examine it in daylight. As he turned to leave, a shadow moved at the room's edge. He froze, his torch sweeping the darkness, but no one was there. Only the portrait remained, its gaze unwavering. Poirot smiled faintly. "You keep your secrets well, mademoiselle," he murmured, "but Hercule Poirot is not so easily deceived." Back in his room, he confided to Hastings, who had stirred at his return. "The manor is alive, mon ami. It breathes with secrets, and the portrait is its heart. Tomorrow we begin to unravel them." Hastings yawned, unconvinced. "You're seeing mysteries where there are none, Poirot. It's just a painting." "None," Poirot replied, his voice soft but firm. "It is never just a painting." The night deepened, and Blackthorn Manor settled into an uneasy silence, its secrets waiting for Poirot's grey cells to uncover them. Chapter 2. The unveiling. The drawing room of Blackthorn Manor glowed with the warm flicker of candlelight, the chandelier above casting intricate patterns across the polished mahogany panels. The air was heavy with the scent of beeswax and old wood, mingling with the faint perfume of the roses arranged in a silver vase on the mantel. Hercule Poirot stood near the fireplace, his small, precise figure a contrast to the room's grandeur, his green eyes scanning the assembled company with the keenness of a hawk. The velvet-draped easel stood at the room's center, the unseen portrait beneath it commanding attention like a silent actor on a stage. Captain Hastings, at Poirot's side, shifted uncomfortably, his soldierly frame ill at ease in the oppressive atmosphere. The household had gathered for the unveiling, their faces a gallery of anticipation, unease, and guarded curiosity. Lady Eleanor Blackthorn stood closest to the easel, her sapphire gown catching the light, her hands clasped tightly as if to steady herself. Her son, Reginald Blackthorn, lounged against a bookcase, his dark eyes restless, a glass of brandy in hand. Despite the early hour of the evening, Clara Wentworth, Lady Eleanor's niece, sat poised on a velvet chair, her auburn hair glowing in the candlelight, but her fingers toyed nervously with a laced handkerchief. Dr. Simon Vale, the family physician, stood with his back to the fire, his silver hair gleaming, his expression one of calm detachment, though Poirot noted the slight tightening of his jaw. Mrs. Beatrice Langston, the widowed friend, perched on a settee, her lavender dress rustling as she leaned forward, her eyes bright with the thrill of the moment. The butler, Mr. Grayson, stood near the door, his gaunt face impassive, while Mrs. Finch, the housekeeper, lingered in the shadows, her hands twisting in her apron as if she wished to be anywhere else. Poirot's grey cells were already at work, cataloguing each gesture, each glance. The room was a chessboard, and these were the pieces, each with a role yet to be revealed. He had sensed the tension at dinner, the undercurrents of unspoken rivalries and buried secrets. The portrait, he suspected, was more than a work of art. It was a catalyst, stirring emotions long suppressed. Lady Eleanor's letter had hinted at disquiet, and now, as the moment of the unveiling approached, that disquiet was palpable. "Monsieur Poirot." "Captain Hastings," Lady Eleanor began, her voice steady but with a faint tremor. "Tonight we unveil a piece of Blackthorn history. This portrait of my great-aunt, Amelia Blackthorn, painted in 1845, has been lost to us for generations. Its return is a moment of celebration, yet... She paused, her eyes flickering toward Clara, then Reginald. "It has brought unease. I trust your presence, Monsieur Poirot, will bring clarity to our troubled hearts. Poirot inclined his head, his moustache twitching slightly. Madame, I am here to observe and to listen. The truth, it always reveals itself in time. Lady Eleanor nodded, then turned to the easel. The room fell silent, the only sound the crackle of the fire and the faint ticking of a grandfather clock in the corner. With a graceful motion, she drew back the velvet drape, revealing the portrait. A collective gasp rose from the group, followed by a hush so profound it seemed the manor itself held its breath. The painting was a masterpiece of light and shadow. Amelia Blackthorne, depicted in a crimson gown, stood against a backdrop of a dimly lit room, a single candle casting a golden glow across her features. Her dark hair fell in waves, framing a face of striking beauty, but it was her eyes that arrested attention, piercing, almost luminous. They seemed to gaze directly into the soul of the viewer. The brushwork was exquisite, each stroke capturing the texture of her gown, the glint of a gold locket at her throat, the faint shadow of a smile that hinted at secrets. The signature, Amelia Blackthorne, 1845, was scrawled in the lower corner, though the artist's name, as Clara had noted, was frustratingly indistinct. Poirot stepped closer, his eyes tracing every detail. The portrait was not merely a likeness. It was a presence, its intensity almost tangible. He noted the locket, its crimson heart-shaped pendant a vivid detail against the gown. The background, with its single candle, suggested a moment frozen in time, a scene of solitude or secrecy. He glanced at the assembled company, observing their reactions. Clara's face had drained of color, her eyes fixed on the portrait as if seeing a ghost. Reginald's hand tightened around his glass, his lips pressed into a thin line. Dr. Vale's expression remained controlled, but his fingers twitched slightly, betraying a flicker of unease. Mrs. Langston's gasp was theatrical. Her hand pressed to her chest, while Grayson and Mrs. Finch stood motionless, their faces unreadable. Magnifique, Poirot murmured, his voice soft but resonant in the silence. A work of genius. But tell me, Madame Blackthorne, why does this portrait provoke such emotion? Lady Eleanor hesitated, her fingers brushing the edge of the easel. Amelia was a mystery, even in her time. She was an artist, a woman of fierce independence, but her life was shadowed by scandal. There were whispers of a hidden fortune, a legacy she concealed before her death. Some say this portrait holds a clue to its whereabouts. Clara spoke, her voice low but clear. It's more than that. My mother used to say, Amelia's spirit lingered in her paintings. This one, it feels alive. Her eyes follow you. Reginald snorted, draining his glass. Rubbish, Clara. It's a painting. Nothing more. A valuable one, mind you, but no ghost story. Mrs. Langston leaned forward, her voice eager. Oh, but I've heard tales. They say Amelia's fortune was hidden in the manor, and her portrait guards it. Why, just last night, I heard footsteps in the corridor. Could it have been her? Doctor. Vale's smile was thin. Imagination, Mrs. Langston. The manor is old, full of creaks and draughts. There's no need to invent spirits. Poirot's eyes gleamed as he listened, his mind sifting through the words. Clara's fear was genuine, he sensed, rooted in something deeper than superstition. Reginald's dismissal was too vehement, suggesting discomfort. Dr. Vale's rationality was a mask, perhaps for knowledge he preferred to keep hidden, and the servant's grace and silence. Mrs. Finch's nervousness hinted at secrets of their own. He turned to Lady Eleanor. "Madame, you mentioned odd occurrences since the portrait's arrival. Tell me more." She glanced at the others, then spoke softly. "Small things, at first. A book moved from its shelf, a door found open when it should have been locked. But last night, I heard footsteps outside my room, heavy and deliberate. When I looked, no one was there." Mrs. Finch gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. "I heard them too, milady, in the east wing, near the attic. I thought it was the wind, but—" Grayson's voice was sharp, cutting her off. "The manor is old, Mrs. Finch. You know how it carries sounds." Poirot's smile was enigmatic. "Old houses, they speak, but they do not walk. Someone, perhaps, was abroad last night." The group exchanged glances, the air growing thicker with suspicion. Clara rose abruptly, her handkerchief falling to the floor. "Excuse me," she murmured, and slipped from the room. Poirot noted her departure, as well as Reginald's scowl and Dr. Vale's fleeting glance after her. Lady Eleanor, seeking to restore calm, clapped her hands. "Let us have some music. Clara plays beautifully. Perhaps she'll return to entertain us." But Clara did not return. The group dispersed to the music room, where Mrs. Langston attempted a lively tune on the piano, her notes jarring in the tense atmosphere. Poirot lingered by the portrait, his torchlight playing across its surface. He examined the frame, noting the same faint seam he had glimpsed the previous night. It was subtle, almost invisible, but it suggested a hidden compartment or panel. He made a mental note to investigate further, preferably without an audience. Hastings joined him, his brow furrowed. "What do you make of it, Poirot? All this talk of fortunes and footsteps, a bit eerie, don't you think?" Poirot's eyes twinkled. "Eerie, but revealing. The portrait is a key, Hastings, to a lock we have yet to find. Observe the household each. One hides something. Clara's fear, Reginald's anger, Dr. Vale's reserve, even the servant's silence. They are threads in a tapestry, and we must weave them together." As the evening drew to a close, the household retired, their footsteps echoing in the cavernous corridors. Poirot, however, did not sleep. He sat at his desk, his notebook open, jotting observations. Clara's reaction, personal connection to Amelia. Reginald's hostility, financial strain. Dr. Vale's comme-tout perfect. Grayson and Mrs. Finch knowledge of the manor's secrets. The portrait, he knew, was the heart of the mystery. Its crimson-clad figure, a silent witness to the drama unfolding. He rose, slipping into his dressing gown, and ventured into the corridor. The manor was silent, save for the distant howl of the wind. He descended to the drawing room, his torch casting a narrow beam. The portrait stood as before, Amelia's eyes gleaming in the darkness. Poirot approached, his fingers brushing the frame's seam. It yielded slightly under pressure, but he did not force it, wary of damaging the painting. Instead, he studied the canvas, noting a faint irregularity in the background, a shadow that seemed out of place, perhaps a hidden symbol. A soft creak broke his concentration. He turned, his torch sweeping the room, but found only shadows. Yet he sensed a presence, a fleeting movement just beyond his sight. "Who is there?" he called softly, but no answer came. He smiled faintly. "You are clever, mon ami, but not cleverer than Poirot." Returning to his room, he confided to Hastings, who stirred sleepily. "The manor watches us, Hastings. The portrait is its eyes, and someone seeks what it hides. Tomorrow, we shall begin to unravel this web." Hastings mumbled. "You're seeing ghosts now, Poirot." "None," Poirot replied, his voice firm. "Not ghosts, truths, and they shall not escape, Hercule Poirot." The night deepened, and Blackthorn Manor settled into a restless silence, its secrets waiting for the morning's light. Chapter 3. The disappearance. The dawn broke over Blackthorn Manor with a pale, reluctant light, the mist curling around the Gothic spires like a shroud. The air was heavy with the scent of damp earth and the faint tang of autumn decay, a reminder of the manor's isolation in the Devon hills. Hercule Poirot, ever an early riser, stood at his window, his sharp green eyes tracing the contours of the landscape. His mind, however, was elsewhere, replaying the events of the previous night, the unveiling of Amelia Blackthorn's portrait, the undercurrents of tension among the household, and the faint seam in the painting's frame that hinted at secrets yet uncovered. His grey cells were restless, sensing the prelude to a drama that had only begun. Captain Arthur Hastings, roused by the distant chime of a clock, joined Poirot in the corridor, his face still creased with sleep. "Good heavens, Poirot, you're up early. Couldn't sleep after all that talk of footsteps and fortunes." Poirot's mustache twitched, a faint smile playing at his lips. "Sleep, mon ami, is for those without mysteries to solve. The portrait, it speaks to me, and I must listen. Come, we shall breakfast and observe our fellow players in this little game." They descended to the dining room, where the household was assembling. The long oak table was set with silver and porcelain, the aroma of coffee and freshly baked scones a stark contrast to the unease that hung in the air. Lady Eleanor Blackthorn presided, her silver hair immaculate, but her eyes betrayed a sleepless night. Reginald Blackthorn slouched in his chair, his expression sullen, a cup of black coffee untouched before him. Clara Wentworth, pale and subdued, toyed with a piece of toast, her gaze flickering nervously toward the door. Dr. Simon Vale, composed as ever, sipped tea, his spectacles glinting in the morning light. Mrs. Beatrice Langston, undeterred by the somber mood, chatted about the weather, her lavender dress a bright note in the muted room. Mr. Grayson, the butler, moved with silent precision, while Mrs. Finch, the housekeeper, hovered near the sideboard, her hands trembling as she poured cream. Poirot, seated beside Lady Eleanor, noted the strained silence. "Madame," he said, his voice gentle but probing, "the portrait, it was a triumph last night. Has it brought further ... disturbances?" Lady Eleanor hesitated, her fingers tightening on her napkin. "I heard nothing more, Monsieur Poirot, but I confess I slept poorly. The manor feels different since the painting's arrival." Before she could elaborate, a piercing scream shattered the morning's calm. Mrs. Finch dropped a tray, the clatter of porcelain echoing as she clutched her apron, her face ashen. "The portrait," she gasped. "It's gone." The room erupted into chaos. Reginald leaped to his feet, his chair scraping against the floor. Clara's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes wide with horror. Dr. Vale set down his cup with deliberate calm, while Mrs. Langston's exclamations filled the air. "Gone? How can it be gone? Oh, this is dreadful." Poirot, unruffled, rose and gestured for calm. "Madame Finch, lead us to the drawing-room, s'il vous plaît. We must see for ourselves." The household followed, a tense procession through the cavernous corridors. The drawing-room, still shadowed despite the morning light, was as they had left it, save for one glaring absence. The easel stood bare, its velvet drape crumpled on the floor. The portrait of Amelia Blackthorn was gone, leaving only a faint smudge of crimson paint on the parquet, stark against the polished wood. The frame, too, was missing, as if the thief had taken care to remove all traces. Lady Eleanor clutched her pearls, her voice trembling. "It's worth a fortune. Who could have done this?" The doors were locked, the windows secure. Poirot knelt by the easel, his gloved fingers hovering over the crimson smudge. He inhaled deeply, detecting a faint scent of turpentine, sharp and chemical. His eyes scanned the room, the heavy drapes undisturbed, the windows latched, the doors. Lock unforced. An inside job, perhaps, he murmured, his voice low but carrying. The thief is clever, but not invisible. He turned to the assembled group, their faces a tableau of shock, fear, and suspicion. "Let us establish the facts. Who was last in this room?" Grayson stepped forward, his gaunt face impassive. "I locked the drawing room after everyone." "Retired, sir." "I checked the windows myself. No one entered after midnight." Mrs. Finch nodded, her voice quavering. "I saw Mr. Grayson lock it. I was in the hall, tidying up. I swear no one passed me." Reginald's voice was sharp. "Then how the devil did it vanish? Paintings don't walk off on their own." Clara, her voice barely above a whisper, said, "It's her, Amelia. She doesn't want to be here." Mrs. Langston gasped, her hand fluttering to her chest. "Oh, Clara, don't say such things. It's too dreadful." Dr. Vale's tone was measured. "Let us not leap to superstitions. A thief took it, plain and simple. Perhaps a servant, or someone. Who knew the manor's layout?" Poirot's eyes gleamed as he listened, his mind sifting through the responses. He addressed the group. "Each of you, tell me where you were last night after the unveiling." Reginald spoke first, his tone defiant. "I was in the billiard room with Dr. Vale, playing cards until nearly 2. He can vouch for me." Double quotes. Dr. Vale nodded. "Indeed, we played several hands." Reginald was preoccupied, but present. Clara's voice was soft. "I was in my room, reading. I didn't leave until breakfast." Mrs. Langston leaned forward eagerly. "I heard footsteps in the corridor. About 1 o'clock. I looked out, but saw no one. It was quite eerie." Grayson's voice was steady. "I was in my quarters after locking up. Mrs. Finch can confirm I retired early." Mrs. Finch nodded vigorously. "Aye, sir. I saw him go to his room before midnight." Poirot's smile was faint but knowing. "Mercy, your alibis are noted." "But alibis, they are like shadows. Sometimes they conceal more than they reveal." He turned to Lady Eleanor. "Madame, may I examine the room further?" She nodded, her face pale. "Of course, Monsieur Poirot. Do whatever you must." Poirot moved with meticulous care, his torchlight sweeping the room. The crimson smudge intrigued him. It was fresh, its edges still tacky, suggesting the theft had occurred mere hours ago. The turpentine scent was stronger near the easel, hinting at a cleaning agent or paint used in the theft. He examined the windows, finding no signs of tampering, and the door's lock was intact, its key still in Grayson's possession. The rug beneath the easel bore faint scuff marks, as if something heavy had been dragged, but the trail ended abruptly at the wall. Hastings, at his side, frowned. "It's as if the thing vanished into thin air, Poirot. No tracks, no broken locks. How do you explain it?" Poirot's eyes twinkled. "It has not vanished, mon ami. It is hidden within the manor's walls. The thief is among us, and they believe they have outwitted Poirot. They are mistaken. He addressed the household. The portrait remains in the manor. Its size, its frame, they are not easily spirited away. I propose we search the house, but first I must know more of Amelia Blackthorne. Madame, is there a library, perhaps, with records of her life? Lady Eleanor nodded. Yes, in the West Wing. There are family journals, letters. I'll have Grayson show you. Poirot inclined his head. Mercy, and one more thing. Let no one leave the manor until we have answers. The truth, it is close, but not yet in our grasp. As the group dispersed, their murmurs of unease trailing behind them, Poirot lingered, his gaze returning to the empty easel. The crimson smudge, the turpentine scent, the scuff marks, they were clues, fragments of a puzzle. He turned to Hastings, his voice low. The portrait is the key, Hastings, but to what lock? A fortune, a secret, or something darker? We shall find out. The morning wore on, the manor's shadows lengthening as Poirot prepared to unravel the next thread in the web of Blackthorne's secrets. Chapter 4. The crimson Cluth morning mist had thickened around Blackthorne Manor, cloaking the Devon hills in a veil of grey that seemed to mirror the unease within its walls. The disappearance of Amelia Blackthorne's portrait had cast a pall over the household, and the air in the grand old house was taut with suspicion. Hercule Poirot, undeterred by the gloom, stood in the drawing-room where the theft had occurred, his small, precise figure a beacon of calm amidst the storm. His green eyes, sharp as ever, lingered on the empty easel, the crimson smudge on the floor, and the faint scent of turpentine that still hung in the air. Captain Arthur Hastings, ever loyal, stood beside him, his brow furrowed with frustration. Really, Poirot? Hastings said, rubbing his hands together against the morning chill. It's as if the blasted thing sprouted legs and walked off. No signs of a break-in, no tracks beyond those scuff marks. What's your next move? Poirot's moustache twitched, a faint smile betraying his amusement. Mon ami, a painting does not walk, but a thief does. And this thief, they are clever, but not cleverer than Poirot. The clues are here small, yes, but significant. The crimson smudge, the turpentine, the scuff marks, they whisper of a plan, a purpose. We must listen. He turned to Lady Eleanor Blackthorne, who stood by the fireplace, her sapphire gown a stark contrast to her pallor. Her hands were clasped tightly, her eyes darting toward the door as if expecting the portrait to reappear. Madame Poirot said gently, I require a tour of the manor. Every room, every corridor. The portrait is hidden within these walls, and I shall find it. Lady Eleanor nodded, her voice strained. Of course, Monsieur Poirot. Grayson will guide you. Anything to restore order to this house. The butler, Mr. Grayson, stepped forward, his gaunt face as unreadable as ever. His dark eyes met Poirot briefly, and there was a flicker wariness, perhaps, or something deeper. This way, sir, he said, his tone clipped but polite. Poirot and Hastings followed Grayson through the manor's labyrinthine corridors, the butler's footsteps echoing on the polished marble. The house was a maze of history, its walls lined with portraits of stern-faced Blackthornes, their eyes seeming to watch the intruders. The air grew colder as they moved deeper, the scent of old wood and dust mingling with the faint tint of the morning's fog. Poirot's attention was drawn to every detail. A slightly askew rug, a door left ajar, a faint scratch on a banister. Each was a potential thread in the tapestry of the mystery. Their first stop was the library, A cavernous room lined with towering bookshelves, their leather-bound volumes exuding an air of ancient knowledge. A massive oak table dominated the center, its surface cluttered with papers and a single candelabrum, its wax drippings frozen in time. Poirot's eyes scanned the shelves, seeking anything related to Amelia Blackthorne. "Monsieur Grayson," he said, "are there records here of the family's history? Letters, journals, perhaps, of Mademoiselle Amelia?" Grayson hesitated, his fingers brushing the edge of a shelf. "There are some, sir. Old journals, mostly. Lady Eleanor keeps them in the locked cabinet." He gestured to a glass-fronted case in the corner, its brass lock gleaming. Poirot nodded. "Open it, s'il vous plaît." Grayson produced a key from his waistcoat and unlocked the cabinet, revealing a collection of leather-bound journals and yellowed letters tied with faded ribbon. Poirot selected a volume dated 1845, the year of the portrait. Its pages were brittle, the ink faded but legible. He read silently, his lips pursed in concentration. The journal belonged to Amelia's brother, Edward Blackthorne, and detailed her unconventional life, her passion for painting, her refusal to marry, and rumors of a hidden fortune. One entry caught Poirot's eye. Amelia speaks of a crimson heart, a secret she guards. She says it will outlive us all. Poirot closed the journal, his fingers lingering on the cover. Tucked inside was a scrap of paper, its edges torn, bearing a single line in Amelia's flowing script. "The crimson heart conceals the truth." He held it up, his eyes gleaming. "Voila, Hastings. A clue, small but significant. The crimson heart, what does it mean?" Hastings frowned, peering at the note. "Sounds like a riddle. Could it be the locket in the portrait? The one she wore?" Poirot's smile was enigmatic. "Perhaps, mon ami, or perhaps it is more a symbol, a key. We must keep it in mind." They continued the tour, Grayson leading them through the manor's many rooms, the music room with its silent piano, the conservatory with its wilted ferns, the guest quarters with their heavy drapes. Poirot's attention was drawn to a locked door at the end of a narrow corridor in the east wing. "What lies beyond, Monsieur Grayson?" he asked, his tone casual but his eyes sharp. Grayson's face remained impassive. "The attic, sir. It's unused, locked for years. Lady Eleanor's orders." Poirot noted the butler's slight hesitation. "Unused, you say? Yet the lock, it shines, as if recently touched." "Open it, please." Grayson stiffened, but complied, producing another key. The door creaked open, revealing a steep staircase vanishing into darkness. Poirot declined to ascend, instead noting a faint scratch on the lock's surface, fresh and deliberate. "Interesting," he murmured. "We shall return to this later." The tour concluded in the garden, where Clara Wentworth sat sketching. Under a gnarled oak, her auburn hair catching the weak sunlight. Her pencil moved with precision, but her expression was troubled, her eyes darting toward the manor. Poirot approached, his manner courteous. "Mademoiselle, your skill is evident. Tell me, what is it about the portrait that disturbs you so?" Clara's hand paused, her gaze meeting his. "It's her eyes, Monsieur Poirot. They're too real, like my mother's. She spoke of Amelia, said she was wronged by the family. I feel her watching me." Poirot nodded, his voice gentle. "And this locket, the crimson heart, does it mean anything to you?" Clara's breath caught. "My mother mentioned it once. She said it held Amelia's secret, but she never explained. I thought it was just a story." Poirot's eyes narrowed. but he said no more, filing her words away. As they returned to the manor, he confided to Hastings, "The Crimson Heart is the thread, Hastings. It ties the portrait to the thief, and perhaps to Amelia's fortune. But we must tread carefully, the web is delicate." That evening, Poirot gathered the household in the library, the fire casting long shadows across the room. Lady Eleanor, Reginald, Clara, Dr. Vale, Mrs. Langston, Grayson, and Mrs. Finch stood or sat, their faces a mix of curiosity and apprehension. Poirot held up the scrap of paper, its words stark in the firelight. "This note," he said, "was found in Amelia Blackthorne's journal. The Crimson Heart conceals the truth. The portrait, I believe, is not merely stolen for its value, but for what it hides. A secret, perhaps a fortune." Reginald's voice was sharp. "A fortune, that's a fairy tale, Poirot. The painting's worth enough without chasing myths." Clara's eyes were wide. "It's not a myth. My mother believed in it," she said. "Amelia hid something precious." Dr. Vale's tone was calm but firm. "Speculation, Clara. We're dealing with a theft, not a treasure hunt." Mrs. Langston clapped her hands. "Oh, but it's thrilling. A hidden fortune right here in the manor." Poirot's smile was faint. "Thrilling, oui, but dangerous. The thief believes in this fortune, and they are among us. I propose a thorough search of the manor tomorrow. Every room, every corner." "Agreed." Lady Eleanor nodded, her face resolute. "Yes, Monsieur Poirot, we must find it." As the group dispersed, Poirot lingered, his gaze on the fire. The Crimson Heart was no mere metaphor. He sensed it was a tangible clue, hidden within the portrait or the manor itself. He turned to Hastings, his voice low. "The thief moves in shadows, Hastings, but they have left to trace the crimson. Clue. Tomorrow we follow it." The manor settled into an uneasy silence, its secrets whispering in the dark, waiting for Poirot's relentless logic to bring them to light. Chapter 5. The Search and the Shadow. The morning light struggled through the heavy mist enveloping Blackthorne Manor, casting a pallid glow over the Devon hills. The manor's gothic silhouette loomed like a sentinel, its windows glinting dully as if reluctant to reveal their secrets. Inside, the air was thick with tension, the theft of Amelia Blackthorne's portrait having woven a web of suspicion that tightened with each passing hour. Hercule Poirot, immaculate in his tailored suit, stood in the entrance hall, his green eyes sharp with purpose. His grey cells were in full motion, piecing together the fragments of the mystery. The crimson smudge, the scent of turpentine, the scuff marks, and the cryptic note about the Crimson Heart. The portrait, he was certain, remained within the manor's walls, and today's search would bring him closer to its hiding place. Captain Arthur Hastings, rubbing sleep from his eyes, joined Poirot, his soldierly frame slightly hunched against the morning chill. "Another day of poking about, a Poirot," he said, his tone a mix of curiosity and exasperation. "I still say it's a devil of a trick stealing, a painting that size without a trace. What's your plan?" Poirot's mustache twitched, a faint smile betraying his confidence. "Mon ami, the thief believes they have outwitted us, but they have left footprints in the sand, even if they are faint. The search today will be methodical, and we shall observe not only the manor but its inhabitants. The human heart, it reveals more than walls and floorboards." Lady Eleanor Blackthorne descended the grand staircase, her silver hair pinned tightly, her face pale but resolute. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, her voice steady despite the strain in her eyes, "the household is ready to assist." Where shall we begin? Poirot inclined his head. Madame, we shall search every room, every alcove, from cellar to attic. The portrait is large, its frame unwieldy cannot be far. I ask that all remain present to ensure ... transparency. The household gathered in the hall. Reginald Blackthorne, his brooding features set in a scowl, his hands thrust into his pockets. Clara Wentworth, her auburn hair loose, her green eyes wary as they avoided Reginald's gaze. Dr. Simon Vale.com, and composed, his spectacles glinting as he surveyed the group. Mrs. Beatrice Langston, her lavender dress rustling with eager anticipation, her eyes bright with the thrill of the hunt. Mr. Grayson, the butler, silent and watchful, his gaunt face a mask, and Mrs. Finch, the housekeeper, twisting her apron, her round face etched with nervous energy. Each, Poirot noted, carried their own burden of secrets. Their glances and gestures, a silent language he was determined to decipher. The search began in the drawing-room, where the theft had occurred. Poirot examined the empty easel once more, his gloved fingers tracing the scuff marks on the rug. They led to the wall, where a heavy tapestry hung, its embroidered hunting scene faded but intricate. He lifted it, revealing only solid oak paneling, but his eyes caught a faint irregularity seam, barely visible, suggesting a hidden panel. He made a mental note, choosing not to reveal it yet. Interesting, he murmured, his voice low. Enough for only Hastings to hear. The manor, it keeps its secrets close. They moved to the library, where the previous day's discovery of Amelia's journal and the cryptic note about the Crimson Heart lingered in Poirot's mind. He rifled through more volumes, finding nothing new but noting the dust patterns. Shelves were recently disturbed, suggesting someone had been searching before him. Curious, he said to Hastings, someone seeks knowledge, or perhaps seeks to hide it. The guest rooms were next. Reginald's chamber was a study in disarray. Papers strewn across a desk, a half-empty decanter of brandy, and a locked drawer that rattled with the weight of documents. Poirot, with Lady Eleanor's permission, opened it, revealing IOUs and betting slips, evidence of Reginald's gambling debts. Monsieur Poirot said, his tone neutral but piercing, these suggest a need for funds. A motive, perhaps. For theft, Reginald flushed, his jaw tight. I didn't take the damn painting, Poirot. I'd sell my own horse before I'd touch Mother's precious heirloom. Poirot's smile was enigmatic. We shall see, monsieur. Clara's room was tidy, her sketchbooks neatly stacked. Poirot flipped through one, noting her talent for capturing faces, particularly one that bore a striking resemblance to the portrait's subject. Mademoiselle, he said, holding up a sketch, this is Amelia Nan. Your interest in her is ... personal. Clara's hands trembled. She reminds me of my mother. I've always felt a connection to her story. But I didn't steal the portrait. Dr. Vale's room held medical texts and a small black bag, which Poirot examined with care. Inside was a vial of turpentine, its sharp scent matching that at the crime scene. Dr. Poirot said, holding it up, this is curious. Turpentine. For cleaning instruments, oui. Vale's expression remained calm. Precisely, Monsieur Poirot. I use it for my surgical tools. Nothing sinister there. Poirot nodded, but his eyes lingered on Vale's steady hands. Of course, yet it is a coincidence, Nan. Mrs. Langston's room was a clutter of lace and novels, her chatter filling the silence as Poirot searched. She mentioned a heated exchange she'd overheard between Clara and Reginald, something about inheritance and family secrets. They were in the conservatory last week, she said, her voice eager. Clara was furious, said Reginald was squandering her future. Oh, it was quite the row. Clara's cheeks flushed, but she said nothing. Reginald glared at Mrs. Langston. Mind your tongue, Beatrice. That was private. The servants' quarters were sparse but revealing. Grayson's room was austere, with a single photograph of a young woman, her face solemn. Mrs. Finch's held a worn Bible and a bundle of letters, their contents mundane but poignant, hinting at a life of quiet devotion. Nothing suggested the portrait's hiding place, but Poirot noted Grayson's reluctance to linger, his eyes darting toward the door. The attic, reached via the locked door in the east wing, was their final stop. Grayson hesitated before unlocking. The scratch on the lock more pronounced in daylight. The attic was a cavern of dust and shadows, filled with crates, old furniture, and cobwebbed canvases. Poirot's torch swept the space, revealing no portrait but a faint trail of disturbed dust, as if something heavy had been moved. The thief has been here, he said softly, but they have covered their tracks. Hastings shivered. This place gives me the creeps, Poirot. No wonder Clara thinks it's haunted. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Haunted, Nan, but it speaks Hastings. It tells us the thief knows the manor's secrets. The search yielded. No portrait, but Poirot was undeterred. As the household gathered for luncheon, their faces weary, he announced, "The portrait remains hidden, but we are closer. The thief is among us, and they grow nervous. We shall continue tomorrow." That night, Hastings was roused by a shadow passing his window. He alerted Poirot, who was already awake, his notebook open. "Quickly, mon ami," Poirot whispered, slipping into his dressing gown. They crept to the garden, where the mist clung to the roses, their petals ghostly in the moonlight. Poirot's torch caught a footprint in the soft earth, leading to a concealed trapdoor beneath a rosebush. Its hinges rusted but recently oiled. "A secret passage," Poirot said, his voice alive with excitement. "The manor, it reveals its heart." They descended, the tunnel narrow and damp, its walls of rough stone exuding a chill. The passage twisted beneath the manor, but it was empty, save for a single crimson rose petal, fresh and out of place. Poirot picked it up, his eyes narrowing. "The thief is clever, Hastings, but they leave crumbs. This petal, it is no accident." They emerged, the night air sharp against their faces. Poirot's mind raced, the petal a link to the crimson heart. The portrait, the thief. "Tomorrow," he said, "we tighten the net." The shadow moves, but Poirot sees. The manor loomed above, its secrets stirring in the dark, waiting for the light of truth. Chapter 6. The hidden room. The mist that clung to Blackthorn Manor had not lifted by midday, its tendrils weaving through the Devon hills like a living thing, shrouding the estate in a veil of secrecy. Inside, the air was heavy with the weight of unanswered questions, the theft of Amelia Blackthorn's portrait casting a shadow over the household. Hercule Poirot, his impeccable suit a stark contrast to the manor's gloom, stood in the entrance hall, his green eyes alight with the thrill of the chase. The discovery of the secret passage and the crimson rose petal had sharpened his focus, his grey cells weaving a pattern from the scattered clues, the crimson smudge, the turpentine scent, the scuff marks, the cryptic note about the crimson heart. And now the hidden tunnel, the portrait, he was certain, was close, and the thief's confidence was beginning to fray. Captain Arthur Hastings, ever the faithful companion, joined Poirot, his face a mix of excitement and unease. "That passage," Last night, Poirot, it's positively gothic. Do you think the portrait's down there, hidden in some forgotten corner? Poirot's moustache twitched, a faint smile betraying his amusement. Mon ami, the passage is but one thread in this tapestry. The portrait is near. But it is the why, not the where, that intrigues me. The thief seeks something more than art, a secret, perhaps the fortune of Amelia Blackthorne. We must look deeper into the heart of the manor. Lady Eleanor Blackthorne descended the grand staircase, her silver hair tightly pinned, her face etched with fatigue but resolute. Monsieur Poirot, she said, her voice steady but strained, have you made progress? The household is restless, and this theft, it feels like a betrayal. Poirot inclined his head, his manner courtly. Madame, we are close. The portrait has not left your walls, and the thief, they grow careless. I wish to examine the attic more closely. The scratch on its lock, it speaks of recent use. May we proceed? Lady Eleanor nodded, her eyes flickering with unease. Of course, Grayson. We'll unlock it, but be cautious. The attic is old, unsafe in places. The butler, Mr. Grayson, appeared as if summoned, his gaunt face impassive but his dark eyes wary. Poirot noted the slight tension in his posture, the way his hands clasped tightly behind his back. This way, sir, Grayson said, his voice clipped, leading them to the narrow corridor in the east wing. The household gathered, their presence a silent demand for answers. Reginald Blackthorne, his brooding features set in a scowl, leaned against the wall, his hands fidgeting. Clara Wentworth, pale and withdrawn, clutched a sketchbook, her green eyes avoiding the group. Dr. Simon Vale stood with his usual calm, his spectacles glinting, though Poirot caught a fleeting glance toward Clara. Mrs. Beatrice Langston, her lavender dress rustling, hovered eagerly, her gossip-prone tongue stilled by the gravity of the moment. Mrs. Finch, the housekeeper, twisted her apron, her round face pale with nervous anticipation. Grayson unlocked the attic door, the scratch on the lock more pronounced in the daylight. The staircase creaked underfoot as Poirot led the ascent, his torch casting a narrow beam into the dusty gloom. The attic was a labyrinth of forgotten relics, trunks of moth-eaten clothes, cracked mirrors, and canvases draped in cobwebs. The air was thick with dust, the scent of decay mingling with a faint, sharp note of turpentine. Poirot's eyes scanned the space, noting the trail of disturbed dust from the previous day's search, now joined by fresher marks, as if someone had returned. Observe, Hastings, Poirot said softly, his torchlight tracing the floor. The dust, it tells a story. Someone has been here, and recently. Hastings shivered, his voice low. This place is like a tomb, Poirot. No wonder Clara thinks it's haunted. Poirot's smile was enigmatic. Not haunted, mon ami, but alive with secrets. Let us see what the attic conceals. He moved methodically, examining crates and canvases, his gloved fingers probing for hidden compartments. Near the far wall, beneath a pile of old drapes, he found a loose floorboard, its edges worn but recently disturbed. With Grayson's reluctant assistance, he pried it up, revealing a narrow space beneath. Inside was a small iron safe, its lock rusted but intact, containing a single object, a gold locket, its surface engraved with a crimson heart. Poirot held it up, the locket catching the torchlight. Voila, he said, his voice resonant in the silence. The crimson heart, as the note foretold. This, I believe, is what the thief seeks. Lady Eleanor gasped, her hand flying to her throat. Amelia's locket. It was said to hold a map to her fortune, but it was lost decades ago. Clara stepped forward, her voice trembling. My mother spoke of it. She said it was cursed, that it brought ruin to those who sought it. Reginald snorted, his tone bitter. Cursed? It's a trinket, nothing more. If there's a fortune, it's long gone. Dr. Vale's voice was calm but probing. A locket is no map, Monsieur Poirot. Why steal a portrait for this? Poirot's eyes gleamed. Because, Doctor, the portrait is the key to the locket, and the locket to the fortune. The thief knows this, and they are among us. Mrs. Langston's eyes widened. Oh, how thrilling. A hidden treasure, right here in the manor. Mrs. Finch's voice was a whisper. It's not right, sir. That locket, it's trouble. I've seen it in dreams, glowing red. Grayson remained silent, his gaze fixed on the locket, his expression unreadable. Poirot noted his stillness, as well as Clara's trembling hands and Reginald's clenched fists. He pocketed the locket, his mind racing. We shall keep this safe, for now. The attic has spoken, but it has more to say. As they descended, Poirot's thoughts turned to the secret passage. The crimson rose petal found there suggested a connection to the locket, perhaps a marker left by the thief. He resolved to explore the passage further, but first he needed to test the household's reactions. At dinner, he announced the discovery of the locket, watching each face closely. This locket, he said, holding it aloft, is the heart of the mystery. It will lead us to the portrait and to the thief. Clara's eyes filled with tears, her voice barely audible. It's my mother's legacy. She said it would prove our place in the family. Reginald's voice was sharp. Your place. You're chasing ghosts, Clara. That locket's worthless. Dr. Vale adjusted his spectacles, his tone measured. A sentimental trinket, nothing more. The portrait's value lies in its artistry, not myths. Mrs. Langston clapped her hands. But it's so romantic. A hidden fortune, a secret locketto. It's like a novel. Grayson and Mrs. Finch exchanged a glance, subtle but not unnoticed by Poirot. He leaned toward Hastings, whispering, The locket stirs them, Hastings. The thief is nervous, and we shall use this. That night, Poirot lay awake, his notebook open, jotting observations. Clara's emotion, genuine or calculated. Reginald's anger, fear of losing inheritance. Vale's detachment, hiding knowledge. Grayson's silence, complicity. The locket was a catalyst, he knew, but the portrait held the true secret. He rose, slipping into the corridor, his torch in hand. The manor was silent, save for a faint creak from below. He descended to the drawing room, where the empty easel stood like a ghost. The tapestry caught his eye, its seam hinting at a hidden panel. He pressed it, but it held firm, unyielding. A soft sound, like a footfall, came from the hall. Poirot turned, his torch sweeping the darkness, but found only shadows. You are bold, mon ami, he murmured, but not bold enough to face Poirot. Returning to his room, he confided to Hastings, who stirred sleepily. The hidden room. Hastings, it is not just the attic, but the manor itself. The locket is a piece, the portrait another. Tomorrow, we find the lock they fit. The manor settled into a restless silence, its secrets pulsing in the dark, waiting for relentless logic to unravel them. Chapter 7. The motive unraveled. The afternoon light filtered weakly through the leaded windows of Blackthorn Manor, casting a pallid glow over the ancient stones and deepening the shadows that seemed to cling to every corner. The mist outside had thickened, wrapping the Devon hills in a shroud that mirrored the unease within the manor's walls. The theft of Amelia Blackthorne's portrait, the discovery of the Crimson Heart locket, and the hidden passage beneath the rosebush had tightened the web of suspicion. And Hercule Poirot stood at its centre, his grey cells weaving the threads of clues into a coherent pattern. The crimson smudge, the turpentine scent, the scuff marks, the cryptic note, the locket, and the rose petal all pointed to a motive deeper than mere greed. The portrait, he sensed, was a key not only to a fortune but to a truth that someone in the household was desperate to conceal. Captain Arthur Hastings, his loyal friend, paced the library where Poirot had requested the household gather, his soldierly frame restless with the tension that had gripped the manor since the theft. "I say, Poirot," he muttered, glancing at the towering bookshelves, "this business is getting murkier by the hour. That locket stirred everyone up, but we're no closer to finding the portrait. What's your next move, Poirot?" Standing by the oak table, his small figure, radiating calm authority, adjusted his tie with a precise flick of his fingers. "Mon ami, the portrait is but the surface of this mystery. Beneath it lies the motive, and the motive lies in the human heart. Today, we unravel it. Observe the household, Hastings, their words, their glances. They betray more than they know." Lady Eleanor Blackthorne entered, her silver hair immaculate but her face drawn with worry. Her sapphire gown a stark contrast to her pallor. Behind her came Reginald Blackthorne, his brooding features set in a scowl, his hands clenching as if to suppress a simmering anger. Clara Wentworth followed, her auburn hair loose, her green eyes shadowed with a mix of fear and defiance. Dr. Simon Vale, the family physician, moved with his usual measured calm, his spectacles glinting, though Poirot noted a slight tremor in his hands. Mrs. Beatrice Langston bustled in, her lavender dress rustling, her eyes bright with the anticipation of scandal. Mr. Grayson, the butler, stood near the door, his gaunt face impassive, while Mrs. Finch, the housekeeper, hovered at the edge, her hands twisting in her apron, her round face pale with nervous strain. Poirot stepped forward, the Crimson Heart locket in his gloved hand, its gold surface catching the firelight. "Mesdames et messieurs," he began, his voice clear and commanding, "the theft of the portrait is no simple crime. It was taken not for its value as art, but for what it conceals, a secret tied to this." He held up the locket, its crimson heart gleaming. The note in Amelia Blackthorne's journal spoke of the Crimson Heart concealing the truth. This locket, found in the attic, is that heart. But the truth it hides is what the thief seeks, and that truth, it is among us. Lady Eleanor's hand tightened on her chair. "Monsieur Poirot, you believe the portrait holds a clue to Amelia's fortune. But why steal it now, after all these years?" Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Because, Madame, the portrait's return has awakened old desires, greed perhaps, or a need to right a wrong. Let us examine the motives." He turned to Reginald, his gaze piercing. "Monsieur Blackthorne, your gambling debts, they are considerable, Nan. The portrait's value could erase them, could it not?" Reginald flushed, his voice sharp. "I told you, Poirot, I didn't take it. Yes, I owe money, but I wouldn't steal from my own mother. That's absurd." Poirot nodded, unruffled. Perhaps yet desperation, it clouds the judgment. He turned to Dr. Vale, holding up the vial of turpentine from the doctor's bag, its scent unmistakable. "Doctor, this turpentine matches the scent at the crime scene. You claim it is for your instruments. But is there another use, perhaps? To clean paint, to hide evidence? Vale's expression remained calm, but his fingers twitched. I've explained, Monsieur Poirot. I use it for medical purposes. You're chasing shadows. Poirot's smile was faint. Shadows, oui, but they have form. He turned to Clara, whose hands were clasped tightly, her eyes fixed on the locket. Mademoiselle Wentworth, you spoke of your mother, of her connection to Amelia. You believe the locket proves your place in the family. Did you take the portrait to find it? Clara's voice trembled, but her gaze was steady. No, Monsieur Poirot. I wanted the truth about my mother, yes, but I didn't steal it, I swear. It, Mrs. Langston, unable to contain herself, leaned forward. Oh, but I saw something, Monsieur Poirot. The night of the theft, I saw Grayson near the attic stairs, long after he said he'd retired. He looked ... furtive. Grayson stiffened, his voice cold. I was checking the locks, Mrs. Langston, as is my duty. I saw nothing unusual. Mrs. Finch's eyes widened, her voice a whisper. I heard him too, sir, in the east wing, late. I thought it was the wind, but ... Poirot's gaze locked on Grayson, noting the butler's rigid posture. Monsieur Grayson, you know this manor's secrets, do you not? The attic, the passage places where a portrait might be hidden. Grayson's face remained impassive. I serve the family, sir. I know my place, and it's not stealing. Poirot nodded, his mind racing. The household was a chessboard, each piece moving to protect or conceal. The locket was a catalyst, stirring emotions, but the portrait held. The key, he addressed the group, his voice resonant. The thief believes the portrait hides a map, a letter, or a truth tied to Amelia's fortune, but they have miscalculated. The locket, it is empty, oui, but it points us to the portrait's hiding place. We must search again, with care, lady. Eleanor's voice was firm. Do what you must, Monsieur Poirot. This must end. Poirot proposed a second search, focusing on the east wing and the secret passage. The household dispersed, their faces a mix of relief and apprehension. But Poirot lingered in the library, his notebook open. He jotted Reginald's debt's motive, but too obvious. Vale's turpentine coincidence or complicity. Emotion, grief, or guilt. Grayson's presence, loyalty, or deceit. The crimson heart locket, he sensed, was a symbol, but the portrait's frame, with its hidden seam, was the true prize. That evening, as the household dined, Poirot watched closely. Reginald drank heavily, his eyes darting to Clara, who ate sparingly, her gaze fixed on her plate. Dr. Vale spoke little, his calm a mask that Poirot itched to pierce. Mrs. Langston's chatter filled the silence, her tales of overheard arguments, and Reginald, Grayson, and Mrs. Finch adding fuel to the fire. Grayson served with silent efficiency, but Poirot noted his hesitation when passing Clara, as if wary of her. After dinner, Poirot slipped into the drawing room, his torch sweeping the tapestry where the scuff marks ended. He pressed the seam, feeling a slight give, but it held firm, locked by some hidden mechanism. The manor guards its secrets well, he murmured, but not from Poirot. Later, he confided to Hastings, who was preparing for bed. The motive is clear, Hastings. The portrait hides a truth, perhaps a letter, a map, or proof of lineage. The thief seeks it, and the locket is their guide. But they are not alone. There is a shadow behind the shadow. Hastings frowned, yawning. You're seeing conspiracies now, Poirot. Can't it just be one person? Poirot's eyes twinkled. Nan, mon ami. The human heart is complex, and this crime, it is a duet. Tomorrow, we set a trap. The manor settled into a tense silence, its secrets pulsing in the dark, waiting for Poirot's logic to bring them to light. Chapter 8. The trap. The evening shadows deepened around Blackthorn Manor, the mist outside weaving a dense curtain that seemed to press against the ancient windows, isolating the estate from the world beyond. The air within was thick with anticipation. The theft of Amelia Blackthorn's portrait and the discovery of the crimson heart locket having drawn the household into a taut web of suspicion. Hercule Poirot, his small figure radiating quiet authority, stood in the library, his green eyes gleaming with the certainty of a hunter closing in on his quarry. The clues, the crimson smudge, the turpentine scent, the scuff marks, the cryptic note, the locket, the rose petal, and the hidden passage had formed a pattern in his grey cells, pointing not only to the portrait's hiding place, but to a conspiracy born of greed and secrets. Tonight, he would set a trap to unmask the thief or thieves. Captain Arthur Hastings, ever loyal, stood by the fire, his soldierly frame tensed with excitement. "I say, Poirot," he said, his voice low, "you're awfully calm for a man about to spring a trap. Are you sure this will work? Whoever took the portrait is dashed clever." Poirot's moustache twitched, a faint smile playing at his lips. "Mon ami, the cleverest thief leaves traces, and this one has left many. The locket has stirred them, Hastings, and they grow careless. Tonight, we shall give them an opportunity to betray themselves." Lady Eleanor Blackthorn entered, her silver hair pinned tightly, her sapphire gown a beacon of elegance despite the strain etched into her face. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, her voice steady but tinged with urgency, "have you a plan? This uncertainty is tearing the household apart." Poirot inclined his head, his manner courtly. "Madame, the portrait is within these walls, and the thief is among us. Tonight, we shall flush them out. I require your trust and the presence of all." The household gathered in the library, the firelight casting flickering shadows across their faces. Reginald Blackthorn slouched in a chair, his dark eyes restless, a glass of brandy clutched tightly. Clara Wentworth sat rigidly, her auburn hair catching the glow, her green eyes shadowed with a mix of fear and resolve. Dr. Simon Vale stood by a bookshelf, his spectacles glinting, his calm demeanour betrayed by a slight clenching of his jaw. Mrs. Beatrice Langston perched on a settee, her lavender dress rustling, her eyes bright with anticipation. Mr. Grayson, the butler, stood near the door, his gaunt face impassive, while Mrs. Finch, the housekeeper, hovered at the edge, her hands twisting in her apron, her round face pale with dread. Poirot stepped to the centre, the crimson heart locket in his hand, its gold surface gleaming. "Mesdames et messieurs," he began, his voice clear and commanding, "the theft of the portrait is a crime of purpose. It was taken not for its beauty, but for what it hides, a truth tied to Amelia Blackthorn's fortune, perhaps a map or a letter concealed within its frame. This locket," he held it up, "is the key, but it is empty. The thief seeks it, believing it will lead them to riches. Tonight, I announce that the locket will be sent to London tomorrow for safekeeping, to be examined by experts. Let us see who acts." A murmur rippled through the group. Clara's breath caught, her hands tightening in her lap. Reginald's scowl deepened, his fingers drumming on his glass. Dr. Vale adjusted his spectacles. his expression unreadable. Mrs. Langston gasped, her voice eager. "Oh, Monsieur Poirot, how thrilling! Do you think the thief will try to steal it?" Grayson's voice was sharp. "The manor is secure, sir. No one will take anything without my knowledge." Mrs. Finch's eyes widened. "It's not right, sir. That locket it's brought nothing but trouble." Poirot's smile was enigmatic. "Trouble, oui, but also truth. Let us retire, but be vigilant. The thief, they will move tonight." The household dispersed, their footsteps echoing in the cavernous corridors. Poirot confided to Hastings as they climbed the staircase. "The locket is bait, Hastings. The thief cannot resist it, nor can their accomplice. We shall watch the attic where the locket was found. The portrait, I suspect, is near." Hastings frowned, his voice low. "Accomplice? You think there's more than one?" Poirot's eyes twinkled. "Oui, mon ami. The crime is too complex for a single hand. One plans, one acts. Tonight, they reveal themselves." They took up position in the attic, concealed behind a stack of crates. The darkness broken only by the faint glow of Poirot's torch, dimmed to avoid detection. The air was heavy with dust and the lingering scent of turpentine. The silence broken only by the creak of the manor's ancient bones. Hours passed, the night deepening, until a soft creak sounded on the staircase. Poirot's hand tightened. On Hastings' arm, signaling silence, a figure emerged, moving stealthily, their torch casting a narrow beam. It was Clara, her auburn hair loose, her face pale but determined. She approached the safe where the locket had been found, her fingers probing the lock with a small tool. Poirot stepped forward, his torch blazing. "Mademoiselle Wentworth," he said, his voice resonant in the silence. "You seek the locket, Nan, or is it the portrait you wish to secure?" Clara gasped, dropping the tool, her eyes wide with panic. "Monsieur Poirot, I only wanted the truth. The portraitite hides a letter, proof that my mother was Amelia's daughter, disinherited by the family. I thought the locket would lead me to it." Poirot's gaze was piercing. "You took the portrait, mademoiselle?" She shook her head, tears streaming. "No, I swear I didn't. I was looking for it, yes, but someone else, ... I heard them planning, before." Poirot could press further. A shadow moved at the attic's edge. Grayson emerged, a knife gleaming in his hand, his face no longer impassive but twisted with desperation. "Enough, Clara," he hissed. "You've said too much." Hastings lunged, tackling Grayson to the floor, the knife skittering across. The boards, Poirot stood over them, his voice calm but commanding. "Monsieur Grayson, you stole the portrait, oui, to find the letter, to sell Amelia's fortune, but you did not act alone." Grayson struggled, his voice hoarse. "Clara knew about the letter. We agreed to split the fortune, but she's weak, she'd have told everyone. I hid the portrait in the passage, to keep it safe." Clara sobbed, her voice breaking. "I only wanted my mother's truth, not the money. You said you'd help me, Grayson, not betray me." Poirot nodded, his mind racing. "The portrait, it is in the secret passage, Nan. The rose petal was your marker, Monsieur Grayson." Grayson's defiance crumbled. "Yes, it's there, behind a false wall. I was going to retrieve it once the locket was mine." Poirot turned to Hastings. "Fetch the others, mon ami. We shall recover the portrait and end this charade." The household was roused, their faces a mix of shock and relief. as Poirot led them to the secret passage. The portrait was found, hidden behind a stone panel, its crimson-clad figure untouched. Tucked within the frame's seam was a letter, yellowed but intact, confirming Clara's mother as Amelia's daughter. Entitled to a share of the Blackthorn estate, Poirot held the letter aloft, his voice steady. "The truth, it is revealed. The portrait was stolen to conceal this, but the locket betrayed you. The manor's shadows seemed to lift, the truth alight in the darkness, but Poirot knew the final act was yet to come." Chapter 9. The denouement. The morning light pierced the mist surrounding Blackthorn Manor, casting a frail golden glow through the drawing-room's tall windows, as if the Devon hills themselves were exhaling a sigh of relief. The recovery of Amelia Blackthorn's portrait, hidden in the secret passage beneath the rosebush, and the unmasking of Clara Wentworth and Mr. Grayson as conspirators had brought the mystery to its climax. But the air remained charged with the aftershocks of betrayal. Hercule Poirot stood before the reassembled portrait, now restored to its easel, its crimson-clad figure gazing out with haunting intensity. The letter found within the frame's seam, confirming Clara's mother as Amelia's disinherited daughter, lay on the oak table, its yellowed pages a testament to a long-buried truth. Poirot's grey cells, having woven together the threads of the crimson smudge, the turpentine scent, the scuff marks, the cryptic note, the locket, the rose petal, and the hidden passage, were now ready to lay bare the full tapestry of the crime. Captain Arthur Hastings, standing by the fireplace, his soldierly frame tense with anticipation, glanced at Poirot. "Well, Poirot," he said, his voice a mix of admiration and impatience, "you've done it again, found the portrait and caught the culprits, but I'm still foggy on how it all fits together. Care to enlighten us?" Poirot's moustache twitched, a faint smile betraying his satisfaction. "Mon ami, the truth is like a painting. It requires the right light to reveal its beauty. Let us gather the household, and all shall become clear." Lady Eleanor Blackthorn entered, her silver hair immaculate but her face drawn with the weight of the night's revelations. Her sapphire gown seemed to carry the burden of her family's secrets, her eyes reflecting both relief and sorrow. Reginald Blackthorn followed, his brooding features softened by a grudging respect for Poirot's triumph, though his hands still fidgeted with nervous energy. Clara Wentworth, pale and subdued, her auburn hair loose, sat with her hands clasped, her green eyes downcast, the weight of her confession heavy upon her. Dr. Simon Vale, his spectacles glinting, maintained his calm demeanour, though Poirot noted a flicker of curiosity in his gaze. Mrs. Beatrice Langston bustled in, her lavender dress rustling, her eagerness for the final act barely contained. Mrs. Finch, the housekeeper, hovered near the door, her round face pale, but her nervous twisting of her apron stilled, as if sensing the end of the ordeal. Mr. Grayson, now in custody of 2 local constables summoned at dawn, stood at the room's edge, his gaunt face no longer impassive, but etched with resignation. Poirot stepped to the centre, his small figure commanding the room, the portrait of Amelia Blackthorn behind him like a silent witness. "Madame, et messieurs," he began, his voice clear and resonant. "The theft of this portrait was no mere act of greed, but a crime of passion and betrayal, woven from the threads of a family's hidden past. Let us unravel it, step by step, to see the truth in its entirety." He gestured to the portrait, its crimson gown vivid in the morning light. "This masterpiece, painted in 1845, is more than art. It is a key to a secret Amelia Blackthorne's legacy, a fortune rumored to be hidden within this manor. But it also conceals a deeper truth, a letter hidden in the frame's seam, proving that Clara Wentworth's mother was Amelia's daughter, born out of wedlock and disinherited by the Blackthorne family. This letter, it restores Mademoiselle Clara's rightful place in the estate. Clara's head bowed, a tear escaping. "I only wanted what was mine," she whispered. "My mother suffered for their cruelty." Poirot nodded, his gaze gentle but unyielding. "Oui, mademoiselle, your motive was justice, but your method was flawed. You conspired with Monsieur Grayson, did you not, to steal the portrait and find the letter?" Clara nodded, her voice breaking. "I knew of the letter from my mother's stories. She said it was hidden in the frame, proof of her lineage. Grayson offered to help. He knew the manor's secrets, the passage, the attic. But I didn't know he meant to betray me." Poirot turned to Grayson, whose eyes were fixed on the floor. "Monsieur Grayson, you saw opportunity in Mademoiselle Clara's quest. You learned of the letter, perhaps from old family records, and believed it led to Amelia's fortune you intended to claim for yourself. You stole the portrait, hid it in the secret passage, and left the crimson rose petal as a marker. We." Grayson's voice was low, defeated. "I've served this family for years, watching them squander their wealth. Clara told me about the letter, and I thought, if there was a fortune, I deserved a share. I hid the portrait, planning to retrieve it once I had the locket." Poirot's eyes narrowed. The locket, with its crimson heart, was a mythos symbol of Amelia's secret, but empty of any map. "You believed it held the key, and when I announced it would go to London, you panicked, revealing yourself in the attic." He turned to the household, his voice rising. The clues, they were clear. The crimson smudge on the floor, it was paint from the frame, disturbed during the theft. The turpentine scent, it was from Grayson's attempt to clean his hands, though he blamed Dr. Vale's vial. The scuff marks led to the tapestry, a misdirection, for the true hiding place was the passage. The note in Amelia's journal, "The crimson heart conceals the truth," pointed to the locket, which in turn pointed to the letter. And the rose petal, it was Grayson's careless signature, linking the passage to the theft. Red voice was sharp, though tinged with relief. So it was Grayson all along. Clara was just a pawn. Poirot's smile was faint. "Not a pawn, monsieur, but a partner, driven by her own motive. Clara sought justice, Grayson sought wealth. Together, they wove this crime, but separately, they unraveled it." Dr. Vale spoke, his tone measured. "And my turpentine, a coincidence, I presume?" Poirot nodded. "Oui, doctor. You paint in your spare time, a fact I confirmed in your room. The scent was a red herring, though it pointed me to Grayson's use of it." Mrs. Langston clapped. Her hands, her voice bright. "Oh, Monsieur Poirot, it's like a play. But what of the fortune? Is it real?" Poirot's eyes twinkled. "The fortune, madame, is a myth. Amelia's wealth was her art, her defiance. The letter is her true legacy, restoring Clara's birthright." Lady Eleanor's voice was soft, her eyes on Clara. "Then Clara is my cousin's daughter. I will make this right. She shall have her share." Clara's tears fell freely, but she nodded, a weight lifting from her shoulders. Grayson was led away by the constables, his head bowed. Mrs. Finch, her face softening, murmured, "It's over, thank God." Poirot turned to the portrait, its eyes seeming to soften in the light. The truth, it is restored, and the manor may rest. As the household dispersed, Lady Eleanor approached Poirot, her voice low. "Thank you, Monsieur Poirot. You've saved more than a painting, you've saved our family." Poirot bowed, his manner courtly. "It is my profession, madame, to bring order to chaos." Later, as Poirot and Hastings prepared to depart, the train to London waiting, Hastings sighed. "Another puzzle solved, Poirot. You never cease to amaze me." Poirot's moustache twitched, his eyes gleaming. "Oui, mon ami, but the human heart, it remains the greatest mystery of all." The manor faded into the mist as the train pulled away, its secrets laid bare, its shadows dispelled by the relentless logic of Hercule Poirot. The end.